You're sitting in a diner somewhere outside of Louisville. The waitress doesn't just bring your coffee. She asks where you're from, tells you about her nephew who lives near there, and somehow makes you feel like you've been coming here for years. But you haven't. You walked in 4 minutes ago. And that's when it hits you. Kentucky's different. The way people move, the way they talk to strangers, the way they hold eye contact just a little longer than what you're used to. It sits with you. If you've ever spent real time around someone from Kentucky, you've probably noticed they are warm people, sure. But it's not the surface level warmth you get in a big city where someone smiles and keeps walking. It goes deeper than that. Because to understand how Kentuckians think, you must understand that this state was never allowed to be just one thing. It was always caught between worlds. And that in-between space shaped the psychology of its people in ways most outsiders never consider. During the Civil War, Kentucky didn't pick a side. Officially, it declared neutrality, one of the only states to attempt that impossible position. But inside its borders, families were tearing themselves apart over it. Brothers fought brothers, fathers disowned sons. The President of the Union and the President of the Confederacy were both born in Kentucky, less than 100 miles from each other, within a year of each other. That kind of tension doesn't just disappear after a war ends. It becomes part of how people relate to each other. And what grew out of that fracture was a deep, almost instinctive drive to hold communities together. That's why you'll hear people say Kentuckians will give you the shirt off their back. It sounds like a joke until you actually experience it. Your car breaks down on a back road, and someone you've never met pulls over, spends an hour helping you fix it, and refuses to take $1 for it. A neighbor mows your yard while you're away, not because you asked, not because they expect something. Just because that's what you do. In many parts of Kentucky, people still barter with each other. They bring food when someone's sick, they show up when there's a flood. But here's where it gets psychologically interesting. That same person who helped you on the side of the road probably won't tell anyone about it. They won't post it on social media. They won't mention it at dinner. Kentuckians have this strange relationship with visibility. They do things quietly. There's a kind of built-in resistance to showing off. Pride is enormous in Kentucky, but it's not loud pride. It's the kind that sits in the chest, not the kind that needs an audience. You'll meet someone who's deeply proud of their town, their family, their roots, and they'll express it by simply staying. And staying is a big deal, because Kentucky is not an easy place to stay, especially in the eastern part of the state, where the Appalachian Mountains hold some of the poorest counties in the entire country. Coal mines that once kept families fed have shut down, jobs are scarce, infrastructure is thin, and yet people stay. Or they leave and come back, sometimes decades later, as if pulled by a rope they never cut. There's this gravitational pull that Kentuckians describe, almost like homesickness, even when they're still home. One woman who moved to New York said she still cries when she hears a certain song about Kentucky. She's been gone 20 years. The place is still louder in her head than the city she lives in, and she's not unusual. That's a common story. Psychologically, that kind of attachment isn't just nostalgia, it's identity fusion. When a place becomes so deeply tied to who you are, leaving it feels like leaving a piece of yourself behind. And Kentucky does that to people in a way that's surprisingly intense for a state many Americans overlook entirely. Part of it comes from the land itself. Rolling hills, beautiful horse farms, mornings where the mist sits low over bluegrass fields and the light comes through golden and slow. People who grew up seeing that every day don't just remember it, they carry it in their nervous system. Calm becomes the baseline, and those calm shows. Kentuckians, as a general tendency, are not easily rattled. There's a steadiness to the way they handle problems that feels almost inherited from a frontier past. Their ancestors were among the first to push through the Appalachian barrier into unknown, dangerous territory. That took a special, deliberate kind of nerve. That nerve didn't vanish. It transformed into something more modern, but just as real. A quiet confidence. A sense that whatever breaks, you figure it out. You don't panic. You don't call 5 people for advice. You look at the problem, you turn it over in your hands, and you solve it. That mentality is everywhere in the state. People in Kentucky have this mechanical intuition that comes from growing up around things that needed fixing. Old trucks, screen doors, tractors that hadn't run right in years. There was no app for it. There were no tutorial videos in the 1980s. You just learned by doing. And that created a deep belief in personal capability. If you're patient enough and stubborn enough, you can handle almost anything. It's earned through repetition, through trial and error, through years of figuring things out with nobody watching. And it shows up in the way Kentuckians approach not just physical problems, but emotional ones too. They endure, they absorb, they keep moving forward, even when the ground under them is shaking. But that endurance has a shadow, because Kentucky also carries a culture of emotional silence. People here were raised in a time and a tradition where you didn't talk about what hurt. You didn't name your stress. You swallowed it and went to work the next morning. Mental health was not something that got discussed at the dinner table, and for many, it still isn't. That doesn't mean people aren't feeling things deeply. It means they learn to process pain alone, in the quiet, in the fields, on a porch at dusk with no one around. Resilience is real here, but it often comes at a personal cost that no one sees. And yet there's humor, a lot of it. Kentuckians are genuinely funny. Not in a sharp urban way, more like a slow-burning wit that sneaks up on you. They'll say something completely absurd with a straight face and wait for you to catch up. That humor serves a purpose beyond entertainment. In communities where hardship is common and talking about feelings directly can feel uncomfortable, laughter becomes a tool for survival. It releases pressure without making anyone feel exposed. You can acknowledge pain through a joke in a way that a serious conversation might not allow. It keeps things light without making them shallow. It's a social technology that Kentucky perfected a long time ago. There's also a fascinating relationship with authority in this state. Kentucky was built by people who didn't trust institutions. Communities that survived by making their own rules because the government was either too far away or too unreliable to help. That suspicion never fully faded. Kentuckians tend to respect people, not positions. A title doesn't impress them. A suit doesn't impress them. But if you show up and do the work, if you prove yourself through action and consistency, they'll follow you anywhere. Loyalty in Kentucky is almost sacred, but it has to be earned the hard way. This plays out in the workplace too. People from this state tend to work without broadcasting it. They don't need validation after every task. They don't expect applause or a pat on the back. They just do the job and move on to the next one. It's a mindset shaped by generations of people who work coal mines and factory floors without anyone ever thanking them for it. Work wasn't something you talked about, it was something you did. And if you look closely, you'll notice that many Kentuckians carry a slight edge of defensive anticipation. They've seen enough setbacks to know things can go wrong at any time. So they plan, not out of pessimism, but out of experience. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's not a slogan here, it's a reflex. What makes Kentucky truly unusual, though, is that it's not one culture, it's at least four. The Appalachian East is rugged, mountain-proud, and deeply insular, with traditions that go back centuries. Western Kentucky feels almost southern, with flat farmland and a slower drawl. The northern part near Cincinnati is practically Midwestern in its pace and personality. And then there's Louisville, which operates like its own country entirely. People from different parts of the state will argue endlessly about what Kentucky really is. Southern or Midwestern, rural or evolving, traditional or progressive. And the answer, honestly, is all of it. That internal diversity creates a psychological flexibility that outsiders rarely see. Kentuckians are used to holding contradictions together without falling apart. That might be the most important thing about their psychology. They are bridge people, caught between the North and the South, between tradition and change, between isolation and community. And instead of being torn apart by it, they found a way to hold it all. It's the same instinct that makes a Kentuckian feel equally comfortable at a horse race in Lexington and a bonfire in a hollow somewhere in Pike County. The range is enormous, but it doesn't feel fragmented. It feels whole, because the thread that connects all of it is that deep, unnamed pride that has nothing to do with showing off and everything to do with belonging. There's something else people rarely talk about, the way Kentucky sticks to you even when you leave. You'll find Kentuckians scattered all over the country, in cities that look nothing like home, doing jobs their grandparents could never have imagined. And almost every single one of them will tell you the same thing. They miss it. Not in a vague, sentimental way. in a physical way. They miss the sound of it, the way the air smells after a summer rain, the way a stranger nods at you on a country road. They carry Kentucky like a second heartbeat, quiet but constant, always there just beneath the surface. If you ask a Kentuckian what makes them different, most of them won't give you a clean answer. They'll shrug. They'll say something funny. They'll deflect in that gentle way they're so good at. But watch them long enough and the answer becomes obvious. They were shaped by a place that demanded everything and promised very little. A place that taught them to be kind without being weak, proud without being loud, and strong without needing anyone to notice. That's not something you learn from a book. It's something the land puts into you, slowly, over a lifetime, until it becomes who you are. So if you're from Kentucky, or if you know someone who is, drop a comment and tell us which part of this felt the most familiar. We're curious which trait hit closest to home. And if you want to see how people from other states think and operate beneath the surface, subscribe to this channel and like this video. Every state shapes its people differently. See you in a different state and with different people.